Okay. Okay. And duly noted. Page 2. And page 3. Okay, we'll entertain a motion to accept as amended.
I'll move that we accept as amended, please.
Second.
Okay, a motion by Commissioner Stranahan, a second by Commissioner Corson to accept the decision summary approval for May 3rd with changes. All those in favor, Commissioner Stranahan?
Aye.
Mr. Corson?
Aye.
I vote aye as well. So we're going to rearrange the agenda just a little bit this morning. We have one item of new business that should not take very long, and we would like to get our county employees back to work in a timely manner and all those kind of things. So we are going to move to agenda item 4, new business. The applicant is the Department of Planning and Zoning. Staff is Ann Roan. The request is a recommendation to the County Council for the Maryland Agricultural Land Preservation Foundation, the mouth easements, the applications for fiscal year 2024. So, Ann, any introduction briefly?
Yes, this is a program that the county has participated in for years. It's been in over 40 years of preserving farms in Talbot County, and this the county started to receiving applications for the 2024 round back in February. The county staff has reviewed them and ranked them according to the formula that has been in place for years. And last year, the county received 30 applications and the state accepted 12. This year, we received 28 applications and the state is accepting 20 of those. And so the top 20 that ranked are we're asking for a recommendation. That recommendation then goes to the county council, and if approved, those applications are then submitted to the state Maryland Department of Agriculture by the end of June.
Right.
So this is something that we do every year.
Yeah, yeah. So I think what we're hearing is there's a tremendous amount of interest in this program, probably
Yes.
representing several thousand acres. Out of those 20 applications, realistically, though, probably only 1 or 2 of those will actually get funded in the end, isn't it? Roughly $1 million and change, depending.
Yeah, well, so last year, typically, there's usually 3 that are made offers on, 3 applications. And last year there were 3, and one person, one of the applications did not accept, so it went down to the next one. So it's typically 3, or not more than 3. The county matches the funds. The state, it's a matching fund thing, and so depending on how much money the county puts into their matching fund, that affects how many applications are actually
Right.
awarded.
Right. So that funding from the county, the match, is actually the transfer funds that come in from real estate
That's
transactions.
correct, yes.
Correct, yep, okay. Yep. Very good. Okay. Jim?
Yeah, I'd make a motion to go into closed session for discuss a real estate matter regarding acquisition of a property for public purpose in the county to protect the county's position regarding a potential sale of a specific parcel of real property for public purpose, as well as legal advice.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Corson and a second by Commissioner Stranahan to go into closed session to discuss matters of real estate. I would ask that Brennan, you join us, legal counsel, and you as well. So
I would like Elisa DeFlo, she's learning the program as well. So.
Absolutely, yep, great. So we will go adjourn to go into closed session, and we will be back shortly.
Okay, I move that we go back into open session.
A second?
Okay, we have a motion and a second to go back into open session. We'll call for the vote. Commissioner Stranahan?
Aye.
Commissioner Corson?
Aye.
I vote aye as well. So the purpose of the closed session, again, was we had a couple questions about the MAF applications as well as some legal advice. So with that, we're ready to move forward on the MAF application.
I don't have any questions. It's-
Okay, no questions? Anything from the general audience? Questions, concerns? Okay, well, we're discussing the MAF applications. If there's any public comment on those applications at this time? Any questions on the program in general?
Then I'll move that the Planning Commission recommend to the County Council approval of the list of farm properties for submittal to the Maryland Agricultural Land Preservation Foundation, MALF, for fiscal year '23 easement purchase consideration.
A second.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Stranahan, a second by Commissioner Corson, to recommend the County Council approval of the list of properties to the MALF program. We'll call for the vote. Commissioner Stranahan?
Aye.
Commissioner Corson?
Aye.
I vote aye as well. And thank you for your hard work on this
Thank you.
important program. With that, we will move back to agenda item 3, old business. The applicant is 5001 SHR LLC. The agent is Ryan Showalter and Brent Ewing. The request, the applicant is seeking a recommendation from the Planning Commission to the County Council for the granting of supplemental growth allocation from Talbot County for the purpose of reclassifying approximately 65.977 acres of land located in the critical area designated as resource conservation area to be reclassified as intensely developed area. The location is Oxford Road, known as Poplar Hill, tax map 42, grid 4, parcel 57. So before we start, I think Mr. Showalter and his group, I asked them to wait in the hall so that we'd be sure to have enough room for the general public because they're going to be at the front anyway. So here we go. Ryan, how are you this morning?
Great, thank you.
Good. So you are under agenda item 3, old business, item A. We went ahead and made the introduction. I apologize for that, but we're getting ready for the staff report to start us off.
Sure.
Brennan?
Sorry about that. Planning Commission, if you'll recall, we held the joint Planning Commission public hearing on this application back in April. That is a requirement of the Supplemental Growth Allocation Code requirements under the Talbot County Code. Once that meeting was held, you all considered several individuals who came out, provided public comment, as well as allowing the applicant to present a summary of the proposed project and the concept plan that they provided to the town of Easton for the PUD request for the proposed development. In addition to that, the Planning Commission for the town of Easton considered the application at their regularly scheduled May 18th meeting, where they held a public hearing and accepted public comment, and also had some questions and requests of the applicant for some design features associated with the proposed development project. They're before you now requesting for your recommendation to the County Council for consideration of that application. I noted in the staff report that the Planning Commission for the town of Easton chose to table this consideration of their recommendation to the Town Council to a future meeting to allow the applicant to address some of the concerns that they highlighted within that meeting. I highlighted the proposed conditions or requests from the Town of Easton Planning Commission within the staff report that I've provided you all for your consideration. Should there be any additional requests based on this discussion, or should you choose to take no action, I believe the applicants requested that you state any of your requests or concerns with the development on top of what the town of Easton's already requested, so that if in the event that they need to return for consideration of your recommendation and the town's recommendation, that they have a complete plan addressing both the town and the county planning commission's requests based on the public comment heard and your concerns and questions.
Great, okay. So I would like to note for the record, as you can see, we're only sitting with 3 commission members today. The other 2 were unable to be here. I spoke with both of them. They are going to, assuming that the applicant wants to move forward today, they're going to review the record, the recordings, whatnot, but we will most likely defer any decision until our July meeting. That's my hope. I would like for all 5 commissioners to weigh in on this if we get to that point. We'll see how that shakes out in the end. Ryan, again, it's your choice if you want to move forward or defer to our July meeting when all 5 are sitting here.
Well, so I understand, first for the record, Ryan Showalter, 100 Northwest Street. I understand your comment that you're not going to make a decision today, which is absolutely fine. As Brandon noted, the Town Planning Commission provided a series of comments and questions and some feedback, which we've certainly heard and started to evaluate. I anticipate that there might be some changes to the project based on that, and we really wanted to have the benefit of your comments and feedback so that we can, the challenge with this project is with multiple jurisdictions, there's lots of different perspectives. And so we didn't want to go down a path based on comments presented to the Planning Commission and their feedback at the town level without hearing yours also. The goal is to try to find a project that is acceptable and will be approved, but we've got lots of different perspectives. So we'd like to go forward today, if for nothing else, to receive any comments, questions, and perspectives that you're willing to share, understanding it's not necessarily a formal deliberation or a vote, but just your individual preferences and guidance would be very helpful for us in this process.
Great, okay. For the record, would you like to introduce your
Sure.
group?
To my right is Kevin Sills, who's the principal for the applicant and owner of the property, and they also have Brett Ewing and Jarrett from Lane Engineering, the design team for the project.
Okay.
And at the Town Planning Commission meeting, we did not make we don't have an affirmative presentation or changes yet to share. We really viewed it as an opportunity to receive input from you on the basis of the current plan, the current proposal.
Got it.
If you have questions, we'd be more than happy to address
Okay.
any of those.
Okay. How about if we hear public comment and then we'll
That's
come
fine.
back for any questions?
Works for me.
Yep. So what I would like to do is ask you 4 gentlemen maybe to come over behind the staff.
Okay.
Normally you would return to the audience, but we're at capacity today, so we want to make room. So we all know this is an important project. A lot's on the table for everybody. We will make sure that everybody that wants to be heard will be heard. We've received several letters just in the last 24 hours. I want you to know they are part of the record. We have received them. Hopefully at the end of this meeting, we will keep the record open until our July meeting. That is our intent. If you are an individual speaking, we'd like to limit your comments to 3 minutes. If you're representing an organization or a group, that would be 5 minutes. If time permits, we will circle back if anybody thinks of something they wish they should have said or could have said. We attended the joint meeting with the Town Planning Commission. We heard a lot of comments about the ball fields versus the passive park. It is the Planning Commission, Talbot County Planning Commission view that that is not really our purview. That is more of a design standard with the town. I understand that is I think there's actually a meeting today somewhere about that with some group. Anyway, if you have comments about the ball field versus the passive park, I would ask that you defer those to the town. If you want to send those to us in a letter, that's fine, but I'm not sure how much weight this county planning commission has on that. Yep, so with that, again, I think to point out Brennan's point, the Talbot County Planning Commission's role in this is advisory only. So we will make a recommendation to the county council, but the Talbot County Council will have the final say in whether the growth allocation is granted or not. So that's where we are. With that, we will start on this side of the room. We'll start in the front row. When you come forward, if you would identify yourself for the record, be sure to sign in before you leave, and we'll try to move this along as fast as possible. I assume you're here representing an organization, so you will have 5 minutes. The floor is yours.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, my name is Alan Gerard with the Chesapeake Bay Foundation on South Washington Street. I'm also a Talbot County and Town of Easton resident, 311 August Street. Appreciate your opportunity to share some concerns, some considerations that we urge you to pay attention to as you're making this recommendation to the County Council. Just first, a few comments about the value of the Tread Avon River. This project is located virtually at the head of the river, and then some comments about what this project does in terms of risk to the value of the Tread Avon River. So the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration a few years back designated the Tread Avon River as part of the Choptank River Complex, one of 10 habitat focus areas in the country. NOAA selected the Choptank Complex because of its incredible wildlife habitat, everything from fish to crabs to oysters. So an incredible natural resource right here in our community that should be of concern to you as you're deliberating on this issue. The state of Maryland agrees about the habitat value of the Tread Avon River. In fact, that river is one of 5 oyster restoration sanctuaries around the state. That means the river is off limits to oyster harvesting. In fact, the state, the federal government, private partners have invested millions of dollars in bringing back the oyster population to the Tread Avon River and those other restoration sanctuaries around the state. So significant public-private investment has gone into restoring habitat in this waterway. What's at risk? NOAA, I mentioned, is the organization that designated the Choptank as a habitat focus area. It also did an ecological assessment of the Tread Avon River itself, actually identifying 8 sub-watersheds within the Tread to just evaluate what is the condition of this resource in terms of the value for wildlife habitat and the public. And it noted of all of the 8 sub-watersheds, the one near the head of the river stood out the most. It said that there are signs of degradation in this part of the river were particularly evident. The most highly developed location in the assessment was in this area, which was impacted by multiple stressors: low dissolved oxygen in bottom waters, the presence of chemical contaminants above low-level NOAA thresholds, high levels of nutrients, high chlorophyll A concentrations, high fecal bacteria counts, and poor water clarity. This is straight from the report a few years back from NOAA. Our partner, Shore Rivers, I don't think they were able to be here today. I know they've been communicating with you and others on this issue, routinely does water quality testing throughout their service area around the shore. In the Choptank River Complex, the water quality measured by the Shore Rivers program is among the worst in the entire Choptank right in this area in the Tread. Particularly water clarity is very low compared to other sites throughout the Choptank Complex. Finally, and others may mention this later in the program, just in terms of developing the critical area program and the IDA designation that's being proposed here today, COMAR Title 27 says, in developing their critical area programs, local jurisdictions shall follow these policies when addressing intensely developed areas. Accommodate additional development of the type and intensity designated by the local jurisdiction, provided that water quality is not impaired. The water quality of the Tread Avon River is impaired, is designated as being impaired by the Maryland Department of Environment, and is something that should be of concern and taken in consideration as you make your recommendation. There's no obligation for the Planning Commission to approve or make the recommendation that the County Council approve this supplemental growth allocation request. We urge you to take a step back, and given all the information that you're hearing from me and the others that you're about to hear from later on this morning, the written communication that you received, if you believe there is any potential for water quality risk from this project, Please consider that as you formulate your decision on this project. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll continue on the front row. Anyone else on the front row? Yes, sir. Please come forward, identify yourself.
Good morning. I'm Tom Ledvina. I'm the president of the Paper Mill Crossing Homeowners Association. We're right between Poplar Hill and the Tredavon. I thank you for your consideration. I know you've put a lot of work into this already, and especially looking at the public comments, which I think are important. You know when you've touched a nerve, and I think this development has touched a nerve. As you consider this request, we ask that you keep in mind that it is a supplemental allocation. So it's not something like a subdevelopment application where if they meet the the minimum requirements, there's a right to do it. That's not present here. This is discretionary. This depends on your best judgment on a number of factors. And it's location, location, location. This is not a generic request for some kind of fungible property somewhere in Maryland. It's a request to build a very particular kind of development. You've seen the plan. I guess it might be altered a little bit, but you've seen what has been put forward in a very particular location, close on to the Tredavon River, between other habitat, the new Easton Woodland Park perhaps, and the buffer along the Tredavon River. And it's in a very special place, Talbot County, which values its conservation judgment. I mean, that's the ethos of Talbot County. It's part of what it makes it so special, and it brought us, many of us, here. This particular development poses this very serious risk to the environment of Talbot County because it will further degrade the already impaired water quality of the Tredavon. And I won't repeat what CBF has told you. You've heard that. But let me just address what came out in the paper today, that there's a report by the University of Maryland that looked at Chesapeake Bay and water quality there and said, oh, it's improving a little bit. It's a C. Chesapeake Bay, the entire Chesapeake Bay region, yes. The Chop Tank sub-region, no. If you look at the map carefully, the Chop Tank area is D and declining. So it, as one of our members said, when you find yourself in an unwanted hole, the first rule is stop digging. You can't continue to pour nutrients and sediment into this, 1 mile upstream of the worst test site of 22 and expect anything to improve. And that's contrary to the Talbot Comprehensive Plan and the goals of the Maryland Critical Area Program. Along the same way, the development will not preserve or create habitat for wildlife, despite a particular location that bears special opportunities to do just that. And I think you've got letters from Dr. Wayne Bell. A little deeper in the record, you've got a letter from Mark Scallion at Pickering Creek about the kind of habitat, the Meadow Park. And I know, the park is park issue, that's not yours. But there are environmental issues tied to the comprehensive plan and tied to the critical area goals that are wrapped up in that. And one preserves and creates conservation habitat in that particular location because it links the habitats in the Easton Woodland Park and the Tredavon. And if you just take a parcel somewhere else, you can't do that. That's why this is a special particular parcel. Finally, the sheer size of the development and the fact that it squeezes over 60% of its dwellings and 40% of its commercial space and most of its amenities into the critical area is inconsistent with what we know as the scenic Oxford Road corridor and the scale of adjoining communities. That's contrary to the comprehensive plan. It will create adverse environmental impacts contrary to the third goal of the critical area program, which essentially says, you can have something that works in a lot of different places, but at some point when you scale that up, even though you're following standard practices, they no longer work. And we've scaled up development in Easton, in the critical area, we used up all that allocation, and the environmental quality continues to get worse. So business as usual won't work anymore. For that, we request that you deny the supplemental growth allocation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, sir. Please come forward.
My name is Tim Springer. I'm a resident at 29371 Stony Ridge Circle. By profession, I'm an ecotoxicologist, semi-retired now. One of the things that we've heard during these discussions is the report in the report from the developers is that they've looked at the runoff water quality and it exceeds the minimum standards that are set up for such a development, which is a good thing in a way. But when those kinds of standards are set up, they're based on simulations, calculations for a standard set scenario. Sometimes there's a buffer built in, but here we have a situation that's not normal or not typical. We're talking about very shallow headwaters of the Tread Avon. Those kinds of waters are particularly susceptible to biological oxygen demand and other types of pollutants. There's not much flushing in those kinds of waters. I would ask, most everybody in this room has been at some point across the Anacostia River going toward Washington. That was a very degraded river at one point in time. Now, they've worked very hard to improve that, but there was a time when you just wanted to get across the bridge because it was not a pleasant place because of the degradation of that river. Now, we certainly don't want to see that in the upper part of the Tread Avon. There are a lot of people living along there that would suffer from that. And the town itself, there's a lot of potential at the headwaters there, especially at Easton Point for development. We don't want to lose that opportunity. We don't want it to become a second Anacostia River. Now, Anacostia River is being improved now. Its water quality is going up. It's not like it used to be. Water quality at the upper Tread Avon is on the decline. And I think, again, back to the idea that we're usually models are based on averages. Here we're not talking about averages. How many of you remember a few weeks ago there was 10,000 gallons of sewage accidentally released into the upper Tread Avon? Well, things happen. They're not average, and they have an effect, often not a good effect. I'd like for you to keep in mind that this scenario of having a really degraded headwater could have long-term consequences and lead to eventually a need for a lot of investment to correct it. Once it's done, it's hard to correct. Stop it from happening before it happens. It's much cheaper. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you very much. Okay. Anyone further in the first row? We'll move to the second row. Coming down. Yes, sir. How are you this morning?
Good morning, gentlemen. I'm Bob Greenlee. I have an office at 19 Bay Street. I have a couple of real estate companies. I wanted to come at this from a couple different perspectives. One is I was one of the principal authors for the comp plan originally and in the first revision 7 or 8 years later. And a lot of the language that you'll see and that you're referring to and making your recommendation, I was a part of. So I'm kind of aware of what the process is. The Poplar Hill Farm has been, for as long as I can remember, earmarked as the site of a regional medical center or hospital, which would be a much more intense use than what is being proposed here. So I think the comp plan has always envisioned this kind of an intensity of use. And I think it's reasonable, 2 state highways, so forth and so on. I think it's a very valuable piece of property. I hate to see the Oxford Road frontage squandered, frankly, it's not its highest and best use to put ball fields in there. That's the appraiser in me testifying. But equally important, more importantly to the point today, is I've worked for 25 years in Queen Anne's and Anne Arundel and Southern Maryland counties. Every county that touches the bay, except for Talbot, I've done fiscal impact studies and adequate public facility studies for projects that involve growth allocation. In Queen Anne's and Anne Arundel, it's a requirement of the growth allocation process that there be a fiscal impact study done. The reason is that you all, if this process proceeds, are giving this developer an enormous gift worth many millions of dollars. And what are you getting for it? And how can you negotiate without knowing what the economic value is of the gift that you're giving this developer? What extractions, what proffers can you get from the developer in return for your largesse? I think there has to be a study. I will not do it. I will not present that conflict of interest, but it can be done. I recommend that you all do it if you decide you want to pass this up the chain, and recommend that the county council approve this if that's your direction. Personally, I'd be sorry to see that, but professionally, I understand it. And if it's going to be approved and sent up the chain, I think you have the right. And in fact, I think the county has the obligation, as does the town for that matter, to fully understand what the economics are all the way around, and I think that could be part of your recommendation.
Yeah. Very good.
Thank you very much.
Continuing in the second row. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Alexandra Myers. My husband and I live on World Farm Road. We've been there for 30 years. And I did write public comments to the website yesterday. I have an addendum which I will also add, and I am very appreciative of everybody's attention to this project proposal, which as a private citizen, for me anyway, and I think for many, seems to have sort of slipped under the wire during a time of COVID, when we were all trying to survive and understand and even save parents, and were preoccupied. Lakeside before that, I drove down Oxford Road this morning to be here through smoke and signs about Lakeside, fixing that up, and the ongoing concerns of what that development means to local citizens, and the unintended consequences, both immediately and over time. And there always, always are some. I deeply appreciate all of the professional, most importantly, the professional comments about critical area and the reason for putting lands in critical area zoning, which was done, in 1985? And all of those issues have only become more compelling and more difficult to manage and more costly to manage, and will exponentially do so in the future, no doubt. I thank you for postponing. I understand you are postponing the vote on granting allocation.
Well, we need to have a motion to do so, but I'm
Well,
hoping that's where we end
Okay,
up.
we do
So,
too,
yeah,
needless to
yeah.
say. I think you've woken a sleeping giant. I do think that this town is at a crossroads, and I do think that particular piece of property represents precisely that. And I ask that you do postpone, and I hope that you do. And please know and take count of every letter that was written and the qualities we enjoy and the reason we are living here and want to live here. I think this project will damage the town, both towns, and I ask you to broadly consider deeper issues on studies, as Bob suggested, that haven't been done. I think they're necessary. Other counties do them, and perhaps it's time now that it's mandatory that Talbot County does it as well. Takes the time, Unfortunately, the expense, I'm assuming it's the developer's expense, but I also would ask that we look at who performs those public studies, which firms do, and there isn't any connection with the owner. May I ask who the owner is? I don't understand whether it's you, Mr. Sills. Are you the owner?
Yes, ma'am.
And from Manassas, Virginia?
Correct.
Yes. How do you know about that? It's not,
Well,
I guess I can't ask that.
Okay, yeah. no.
Okay, but you are the owner. Okay. All right. Well, that's good to understand because I understood it was a little bit different. Thank you for your time, and thank you for all of your considerations.
Thank you. So I'd ask that you sign in before you leave the table. You can slide over, and we'll continue with the second row. No takers. We'll move to the third row. Yes, sir. How are you this morning?
Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you for holding this session on a most important project. My name is Dan Watson. I represent the Talbot Integrity Project and 8404 Averly Manor Lane. I recognize, we all do, that the Commission is not per se making a determination here about consistency with the comprehensive plan. As I understand it, this is more generally a recommendation to the County Council as to whether or not to grant a growth allocation that's not a required growth allocation, but is discretionary. That said, I do believe that consideration of the same issues that you deal with in comprehensive plan evaluations is critical. And as many people don't understand necessarily, the Commission by Maryland law is charged with evaluating these matters based on 7 criteria, and they apply here also. I want to speak briefly about two of them that I believe you should take into consideration. The first has to do with criterion number 5, development patterns, which you evaluate in any matter comes before you. In this particular instance, development patterns include matters such as whether or not the county benefits, and your evaluation is countywide, the county benefits from scattering commercial development in the location at Oxford Road and the bypass. With due respect, my own point of view is it's counterproductive to the development pattern of the county. It's been overlooked. I think it's counterproductive to the town too, but that's their decision. The second thing I want to talk about, though, is enormously more important, and that's your criterion number 1, which is called policies. And the point of this is that first comment I had to do with the development pattern having to do with moving commercial space. That's a real in the weeds sort of technical issue. And with due respect, I think the issue that has gotten a lot of attention about the ball field versus the natural open space is a red herring, because the thrust of the developer's comments, and I'm a former real estate development, I understand this tactic. You solicit comments of a very technical nature from the town and from the and today from the planning commission, county planning commission, so as to be able to respond and rearrange the deck chairs on this ship. But that's not the point at all. I believe that the planning commission and the county council needs to think of this from a policy point of view. There is no requirement, there is no need for the Talbot County to adopt a policy of conveying development rights on 68 acres of land that are specially protected by the critical areas legislation. And as Mr. Greenleaf said, it is a gift of enormous proportions, and there's no quid pro quo that benefits the county. Incidentally, contrast that were it the case that a large new medical facility was going in there strategically, one could argue that that would be the kind of trade-off. So the Talbot Integrity Project urges that you recommend against any growth allocation, irrespective of development policy patterns having to do with the policy of the thing. Thank you.
Yep. You would sign in before you leave. So we will continue with the third row. Anyone further? Yes, sir.
Good morning. I'm Bob Camozo. I represent, I'm on the board of the HOA at Waverly Island Road. I thought I'd put a kind of a personal note as well as just the comments from our HOA about what we believe would be a very detrimental project that could affect our property values, could affect our way of living, which we hold very near and dear in a very tremendous county. Already, we are looking at water quality, as has been described here, as probably about a D level in the upper Tread Avon. What that means to property owners like me is a fear of even swimming in our backyard, in our waters, or eating seafood from just off our dock. These are not things that we take lightly. And of course, you will make those kinds of determinations in a technical fashion as to what this project might or might not do to the water quality in our backyards. Those would be statistical in nature, I've heard, but we worry about what causes we might not even imagine going into the future. We're already at a D. How is that going to improve by this kind of a development? Another point of view is, and this is an expression from, and I've solicited from the other people that live in Waverly Island in our community, is the safety of much more traffic along that Oxford Road corridor. Already I see accidents right there at that intersection that occur. How is this going to be mitigated? I have not seen, and perhaps I haven't been privy to everything, but I have not seen anything that addresses the safety issues of so much more traffic coming into that road in our community. So I would urge you to take a kind of a personal note about the quality of life that we hold near and dear here in Easton and Talbot County, and reflect on how that could be improved or damaged in terms of this development. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Following up with the third row, anyone further in that row? Okay, moving back to row 4. Okay, no takers. All the way in the back. Yes, sir, please come forward.
Morning. My name is Chris Cook, 28299 Old Country Club Road. Here's a private citizen. Thank you for taking our comments. I wanted to just give a local flavor to the topic that really hasn't been discussed much. I think this last speaker brought it up for the first time, and that's the traffic problems that this project will produce. I'm not opposed to a project on this site. As Bob Greenlee mentioned, it was noted for a medical facility, but what Bob failed to say is that medical facility, if it were planned and brought before you, you'd have the same group out here fighting to make sure that it was an appropriately sized project. And if they were trying to take 65% of the project out of critical areas, you'd hear the same sort of discussions from your citizenry. We're trying to protect our waterways. This project, as it's currently proposed, is not right for this location. If they were to build it on the 45% of the non-critical areas project, I would have no problem with it, and I think that you would see the traffic counts go down accordingly. When I mentioned, if you look at the intersection that the traffic engineer proposed and discussed during the joint session, when they asked him about some of his those intersections, he was barely able to locate them. But that intersection on Oxford Road, if you look at it, it's got a turn lane, so that you can imagine the traffic coming from Easton, heading to that project either at the end of business or during a time period where there's a lot of ball games out there. You're going to see all that back up because you're going to still have traffic coming from Oxford. And if there's a steady flow of traffic, right now we're starting to see traffic counts on that Oxford Road build every year, and you're going to see traffic build up there coming from Oxford. So you're not going to be able to turn left into this new project, and so that traffic's going to back up into the already failed intersection at the bypass. That's a state highway that runs right across a local traffic road, our Oxford corridor. We've seen deaths at that intersection. They've redesigned it so now you have to jog around to get, as you're heading towards Oxford. They're very dangerous. There's often people, they don't recognize that there's a Dodge around and they're in the right lane and they try to go straight, and the people that are trying to get out to Oxford almost hit them. There's accidents or near accidents almost continually at that failed intersection. And we're just going to compound that problem. And what people fail to realize when they look at traffic in Talbot County is they forget about what it's like to live here in Talbot County during the summer times. We all experience it. On some occasions, Route 50 becomes a parking lot 10 miles long. Well, I know some people, they say, oh, we won't even go to the east side of town to shop during the summer. People on the east side of town say, we won't even come to the west side of town if we don't have to during the summer, because Route 50 bifurcates our town. And if you remember when they closed down the bridge to rebuild the Peach Blossom Creek Bridge, they closed it and they routed all the traffic coming from Oxford down Land Ave, and then that's when they had to put in the traffic light, which they never had before, out there by what was Salisbury Pewter and the car dealership. And all that traffic had to route that way, and it was a mess. We're going to add more traffic when they put an intersection there for this new project. It's just going to be a failed intersection. It's going to cause nothing but problems. One of the things you're going to see from this new Lakeside development is a lot of people will not get on Route 50. If they're coming from Lakeside, they're coming into town, they're not going to get on Route 50 during the summertime because Route 50 is going to be a parking lot. There's all that traffic. So what they're going to do is they're going to cut through Trap. They're going to come down White Marsh, and then they're going to come down Alms House and come down Spring Road, dumping into Oxford Road, and then they're going to make the back way into town. And if I'm going to Trap, that's the way I go. And local people know that. And so all those people that you're going to add in Lakeside, just going to add more traffic. So I oppose this project as it's currently developed, and I oppose you granting the additional critical areas allocation. Thank you.
Thank you. Yep. So please sign in before you leave, sir. Yep. So again, anyone else on this side? Okay, so we'll start on what would be to my right, first row. Yes, sir. Please come forward.
See, I'm Ron Fry, 28468 Clubhouse Drive over in Easton Club. And we have 180 acres of open space right now with the closed golf course. It has not been active for several years. We have all kinds of wildlife habitat now. We have ospreys, we have fox, we have deer. And as you know, we have the 79 acre forest adjacent. And you know from the world news, the UN study is saying that we keep losing world habitat. And so I think we have an ideal opportunity here with this acreage adjacent to all this open space to look at the long-term planning and have, in addition to the quality of the river, have some extra quality for wildlife corridors. So I am opposed to this concentration of development. I also, looking down at Chatham, I think Chatham Arms and the surrounding properties at Idlewild Park, the density here is incompatible with the current scenario that we have in 2023. And I think as the town has developed, and also when the refinery was proposed, I think in 1970, and the county decided to go toward the tourism idea, I think to maintain the quality of life, that this project is not suitable for the current conditions that exist at this time. So again, I am opposed to the density of this development.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Continuing with the front row. Okay, we'll move to the second row.
My name's Harry Slaughter. I've lived in Waverly, I've owned property in Waverly since 1972. I own 7641 Treadavon Circle, Lot 19, in the Waverly subdivision. That's in my Harry Slaughter Family Trust. And my wife and I live at 7643 Treadavon Circle, the house property next door, which is in Parcel 136 of the Woodland Farm, original Woodland Farm. And I'd like to read the letter that my wife wrote to the Planning Commission. This is from Martha Vandenberg Slaughter. I am the trustee and owner of 7643 Treadavon Circle, Parcel 136, Easton, Maryland. I would like to go on record as opposed to consideration of the award of the supplemental growth allocation being requested by 5001 SHR LLC for the 65.977 acres currently located in critical areas. I grew up in a military family and was taught since childhood to observe the rules in everything I do. My husband and I acquired our home in Treadavon Circle in September 2006 and moved there shortly after. My husband owns the adjoining property for over 50 years. We are constrained by the critical area regulations that were enacted after our home was constructed. We feel that the supplemental growth allocation should be reserved for situations where somebody has a real problem that needs to be solved. We have little sympathy for the developer who seeks relief from compliance with the rules that they knew were in effect when they conceived their development plan. I see no reason why the Planning Commission would consider a favorable recommendation for this encroachment on our critical areas. That's my wife's words. My words are pretty much the same. I haven't heard we've heard a lot of arguments while it's not good for the environment. I haven't heard any argument of why there's any good reason to grant an exception to the critical area rules. And what I say about we might need to have an exception at some point in time is our house is built 49 feet from the water. We're in violation of the critical area rules. But if we needed to add a bathroom because we were handicapped or something, we would need to seek a variance. So I don't see why you should give a variance to somebody just so they can build more on land when the regular citizens of Talbot County are constrained by the rules of critical areas which were imposed on them. And I agree with the rules, but they were imposed upon them after they built their house. So that's my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir. We'll continue with the second row. Yes, sir, on the end.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Owen Bailey. I'm the Director of Land Use and Policy for the Eastern Shore Land Conservancy at 114 South Washington Street.
So I'm going to ask you to speak up a little bit so the ones in the back can make sure to.
Certainly.
Yeah.
Owen Bailey, Eastern Shore Land Conservancy, 114 South Washington Street. 2 points. One, we feel that the transportation report is incomplete as it does not account for the oncoming traffic that will come down from the trap development and from other developments in Talbot County. And second point, as we await new regulations for stormwater management from the state, we feel it is the responsibility of our jurisdictions to look for those updates and incorporate them into consideration for the growth allocation. So thank you for your time.
Very good. Thank you. Anyone? Yep, we'll get you to sign in a second. Yes, sir.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Tony Newell. I'm a 23-year resident of Easton. I just wanted to say I've written several letters to the town of Easton and yourselves. Thank you for your careful consideration of what's coming before you. I just wanted to say that I support everything you've heard in support of reviewing and looking closely at the huge impact this development will have both on the critical area and also service, safety, road and everything else that you've heard this morning. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone further in the second row? We'll move to the third row.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Jim Wilcox. I live at 307 North Morris Street in Oxford. I've submitted already an extensive written comment addressing these issues, and I won't bother going over all those points at this time because I know that's part of the record already. What I would like to do, which I think I could add to what's been said today, is to point out that I think this should be an easy question for you, despite all that you're hearing. I was looking at the agenda and the orders and such that were contained at your webpage, and there's an item 4A supplemental, which was created by the Planning Commission following the hearing that was held previously. And understandably, it says that Easton identifies as this tract as a priority development area with mixed-use development potential. I don't deny that. I'm sure that's what they want to do. That's why we're here. On the other hand, it goes on and says, but the Talbot County comp plan is intended to preserve quality of life and rural nature of landscape that makes the county so unique, and to disincentivize urban sprawl, disconnected or leapfrog development patterns. It's to encourage development and growth where there is access to public facilities and utilities that already exist or are planned for. And that really, in making the decision here, the question before this board should be, will the project fulfill a public need in a manner consistent with the policies and objectives of the comprehensive plan? I would suggest to you respectfully that based on the overall objectives of the comprehensive plan, which I've described and which are in your actual order, which is contained as item 4A of your supplement, that you should reject the application. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone further in the third row? Moving back to the fourth row. Yes, sir.
Hello. My name's Dennis Rosen. I live in Cooks Hope. I'm on the board. I'm not representing the board. I'm just a resident in Cooks Hope. I wasn't prepared to say anything, but I felt obligated. There are some things going on in Cooks Hope that I've never heard brought up here before, but there's a 65-unit development that's part of Cooks Hope. It was a part of the original PUD. That is currently in the development process. It's another 65 units, not to mention a couple of, just maybe 5 or 6 more lots in Cooks Hope that will presumably have houses built on them. So once again, traffic studies are always passed, as it was been pointed out with Lakeside not being accommodated. There will be an additional, presumably at least 65 more cars going up and down Oxford Road. The second thing is, at no time before any of these hearings, have we ever heard someone say, let's improve the quality of the Tredeavon River. It's already in bad shape. And I think that's what really cuts to the meat of the matter here. Once again, we have a critical area. And once again, we're talking about degrading it a little bit more. Now, I know it says it will improve 15%, and it's already been pointed out that those are based on historical things that are being currently being reviewed by the state, because the quality of the rivers just keeps going down. So between the traffic, the overall detriment to the environment, to the Tredeavon, I believe that once again, Talbot County is going to presumably give supplemental lots to the developer. Easton's already out of those lots, and I'm probably living in one of the houses that was part of that that was built in 2000. But that's not, once again, we need to stop putting development in areas that will degrade the river and also degrade the quality of life of the residents. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, sir. Anyone else? Yes, sir. Please come forward.
Thank you all for listening to all our comments.
Oh, yeah, sure.
My name's Bruce Gordon. Excuse me. I'm not just a resident of Talbot County. I'm a born and raised native. I was born here in 1955. I live just a little ways down from Easton Point on the South Fork. I can tell you unequivocally, and there isn't a person in this room that knows that river better than I do. And I can tell you, since I was going out on those waters from 5 years on up, the river is a joke. And as hard as the CBF and everyone else in the state is working towards trying to make the Chesapeake Bay better, we can't begin to get there if we're going to continue to allow for development of almost any kind when it comes to critical area. The Chesapeake Bay critical area was set up for that sole purpose. And when you look at what Queen Anne's County has done in the past, I call it the county of quick approval. It's a joke. They've done more harm to the bay than any other county that I can think of. But the reality is, everyone wants to come to the Eastern Shore. Why? Because of our rural lifestyle. Excuse me, because I get a little upset about this. Because as a native, not just a citizen, I consider it not just my right, but my job to protect this area. I can tell you right now, without any reservation, this development should never go forward, period. There's a better purpose for that land. I've been looking at that property for at least, the last 40, 50 years. And I've said for a long time, there's a higher purpose for that property. And it doesn't include development. And there's a reason for it. I guess it's time to let the cat out of the bag. Sorry, man. I'm just gonna say it. Your name again, sir?
Kevin.
Now, listen,
So,
so,
okay,
look,
go ahead. All right,
okay,
just-
we're gonna be civil, we're gonna be polite.
No,
We're
no,
not,
no, this-
okay.
no.
All right.
I think it's time to come to realize what we are as far as this county. This is God's country, and Talbot County is God's little acre. That property should have one purpose moving forward for the betterment of everyone in this county, not just the people, but the business community. That property should be turned into a working classroom farm. I would ask this developer, and you don't know unless you ask somebody, to take a long, hard look at what you want to do. The best thing we can do is take that property and turn it over to the Talbot County Council and let them give it a 100-year lease at $1 a year to the Talbot County School Board and create a working classroom farm. I've already talked to Lynn about this, and I can tell you right now, what will happen, excuse me, I get choked up about this. What will happen is that we would take the kids going forward and give them an opportunity to create not just a career, but life for each and every one of them. It will help businesses keep our kids here because the things that they will learn there will allow them to go into the business world. We can put 404,000 homes up anywhere on this planet, but that piece of property is special. Not just because of critical areas and traffic and taxes and everything else. We have to start realizing where we're going in the future. The future is the kids, because we all came from these schools. And we managed to make something of ourselves. But I've been watching what happens in our schools, and these kids are missing out. Teaching them the book work is part of it. Getting their hands dirty, getting their minds engaged is the key to success. I know that better than anybody because I'm a mechanical engineer. Strictly speaking, I don't know of any engineer in this world, this planet, that can put 6 gallons of water in a 5-gallon bucket. And that's exactly what we're going to be doing if we allow for any kind of development on that property. It's a lousy 120 acres, but that 120 acres could provide a future for kids till the next millennium. And I would defer that you, sir, would, if you want to become a part of this, instead of worrying about putting up ball fields and 400 new homes and some other kind of business development, there's plenty of other land on the planet to do that. This is right in our backyard. This can give us an opportunity to put Talbot County on the map in a way that no place else in the state would have. So with that being said, I would ask that not only you guys in the county council deny the growth allocation, but I'll take it to the next level. I'm going to ask you, Mr. Stills, to take this development and shelve it. And if you want to become a part of this kind of development, I would welcome that. If not, give the land back to the county, sell it back to them. I know you have a lot of money invested in it. And I understand where you're coming from as a developer. As an engineer, I appreciate that. But not every piece of land on this planet has to have a home on it or a business. We need to start thinking a lot smarter than what we're doing.
Yeah. Thank you. I apologize if I jumped the gun. I just wanted to didn't want it to go south on us. Yep.
Good morning. I can attest to this gentleman's passion for the project because he left his wallet on the seat.
There's the first dollar for the first.
Yes, sir. Good morning.
I don't know how on earth I follow that, but I'll give it a shot. My name is Reginald Taylor. I'm here in opposition to the application for the supplemental growth allocation. I live at 7590 Polly's Hill Lane in Paper Mill Crossing. My wife and I have been residents here in Easton for just over 2 years. One of the difficulties with going later in the in the pecking order here. It's really difficult to come up with something new to say, so I won't try. I'll just summarize what I think I've heard here today. So it seems to me that there may be 3 unintended consequences to this development. Number 1, a negative impact on water quality. Number 2, a negative impact on the traffic. And number 3, a negative impact on the overall quality of life in the Easton area and the surrounding counties. And with that, I'll leave that with you, and I hope you consider all these great comments that we've heard here today and deny the application going forward. Thank you.
Thank you for coming today. Anyone else in the 4th row? Yep, last row. Mr. Anderson.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. My name is William Anderson. I reside at 21715 Heavenly Haven Road in Sherwood, Maryland, but have recently bought a home and will be relocating to the Thread Haven development, which is just opposite the intersection of Oxford Road and the Easton bypass. I am vice chair of the board of Shore Rivers. We have already submitted comments by Mr. Matt Pluta expressing our serious concerns about the negative effects on water quality of the already impaired Tread Avon River. Mr. Pluta spends a lot of time on that river. He sends his apologies for being unable to be with us this morning. In addition to those written comments, we have developed a map that overlays the critical area on the proposed project plan. And I would ask, Mr. Chair, that you keep the record open to receive additional information, including, but not limited to, this map that will be submitting for the record. The map shows that of the project site, 66 acres are in the critical area. That 66 acres includes about 278 of the proposed dwelling units for the property. Specifically, it includes, within the critical area, 32 estate homes, 96 townhomes, 150 apartments, 2 pools and clubhouses, a sports complex that will have 3 fields, a snack bar, restrooms and grandstands, a 209-car parking lot for the sports complex, a dog park, and 40,000 square feet of retail and office space. All of this development within the critical area means a huge amount of impervious surface from which the stormwater will have to be managed, will ultimately be running off into the Tread Avon River, carrying with it not only the dog waste and the wrappers from the snack bar, but every other conceivable form of pollution that can be generated out of 278 homes, a dog park, 2 pools and clubhouses, a sports complex with 3 fields, snack bar. Think of all the fertilizer that will be washed into the Tread Avon River. And we know that MDE has acknowledged that its current stormwater management regulations are inadequate and they're in the process of being revised and overhauled. This is neither the time nor the place for a development of this scale. We urge you to recommend that the County Council reject this overly ambitious proposal for development at this location. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else in the back row? Yes, sir.
Good morning, Commission members. Tom Allspock, speaking for Talbot Preservation Alliance. And if I may, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to just very quickly distribute a visual aid.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
on the theory that a picture's worth 1,000 words, I'll truncate my comments. I also would hope that you successfully are able to keep the record open, as you have indicated may be the case. We've not submitted written comments yet, and want to wait to see what happened at this hearing and take into account any further modifications that might be made to this plan, so we can comprehensively comment on it in its final form in advance of your next meeting. So our written comments will be forthcoming. But what I do want to do this morning was to distribute what you have in front of you, just because it kind of visually lays out what everyone has been talking about. I'm not sure if you've seen these photographs. I first want to give credit to Shore Rivers, who was able to capture the first two photographs you have in front of you. But they very visually demonstrate the proximity of all of the development that Mr. Anderson just described to you to the headwaters of the Tread Avon. All that land to the left of that, the wood stand there, is where all that development Mr. Anderson just described will be placed. So you can see how dramatically close to the river that will occur, and why the particular concerns we all have about impact on the river are quite well taken, given the obvious ability of this new project to encroach on this waterway. So I wanted you to take that into account. The third page of what I gave you is not from Shore Rivers. This is from the developer's elevation drawings. That is an elevation of what the facade of one of 7 apartment buildings will look like, which will be placed on Oxford Road. There will be 7 of these buildings, each one housing approximately 30 apartments, 3 stories high. I suggest to you that just by looking at this, you can see it is entirely inconsistent with the notion of preserving the rural character of Talbot County. But that's just for your information as well. We're not here to, and I certainly empathize with the comments of the gentleman, 2 speakers before me, about doing nothing here. That would be great. It may not be on the table because we have certain zoning that's in place in the town of Easton for part of this parcel, and we have certain zoning laws that are in effect. However, that has nothing to do with whether you are obligated to grant this growth allocation request. And in fact, a very substantial development could be accommodated on this property without granting any growth allocation. With the land that is not in the critical area, this developer could easily put together 200 dwelling units for this project. 200 dwelling units is an awful lot of project for a location like this on the Oxford Road. And 200 dwelling units are plenty of dwelling units to make a lot of money. We know this because the other projects in the town of Easton that have just been recently approved are all 200 dwelling units. There's one on Dutchman's Lane by the Four Seasons Company. They're putting up 200 units there. We have what was called Gannon Estates. I'm not sure, it's got a new name now. That's 200 units on Matthewstown Road. There's an apartment building that's proposed there for another 164 units. So, you know, by denying the growth allocation and limiting the development in this parcel to that land which is not in the critical area and is many, many feet away from what you see in the picture in front of you, by doing that, you're not depriving this developer of the opportunity to make a handsome profit on its investment here and to take advantage of the zoning that exists in the county, or excuse me, in the town already. So we would urge you to look at this from a perspective of how can we accommodate these conflicting interests and allow for some limited development that would be consistent with the comp plan without impinging on the critical area, which most definitely should be protected. As I said, we'd like to submit our written comments following this meeting and in advance of the next meeting that you have planned on this subject. And thank you for your time this morning.
Yep, thank you. Tom, please, Tom, withdraw spot. Please sign it, yep. So at this time, we're going to circle back for anybody that wish they had said something but forgot, or anybody that didn't get a chance to speak. So hopefully we can do this fairly quickly. So we'll again start on this side of the room. First row, second row. Yes, sir.
This is Tim Springer again. I've already recorded my name here. Thanks again for letting us have a chance to speak. I actually have a question. In the earlier meetings, as I understood it, the responsibility for handling the sewage and the stormwater runoff would both be responsibilities of the HOA. Now, if that's true, then if things don't work well, then how does the county deal with the responsibility there? That's my question.
Yeah. So real quick, Lynn, we're going to put you on the spot here. If you can answer identify yourself, and you can, we'll let you answer the gentleman's question, either you or Brennan. Yep. Lynn?
Sure. Can
Yep.
I do it from here, or I need to go?
If you get to a mic would be great. Yep.
Sure. So Lynn Thomas, the town planner, and I have our Director of Planning and Zoning and the town attorney with me, so they'll correct me when I misstate something. The homeowners association would not obviously be responsible for wastewater. That would be the town of Easton. But there, sometimes, and it depends on the particular development, I think we try to steer away from that, but there are certainly instances where stormwater is the responsibility of a homeowners association. It would be reviewed, approved, and inspected by the town of Easton, regardless of the arrangement.
Good. Okay.
Is that inaccurate?
Yep. Okay. Thank you. Yes, sir.
The council members of the commission, Alan Giroux with Chesapeake Bay Foundation. I know Owen Bailey with Easton Shore Land Conservancy and others have referenced the pending updates to the Maryland Stormwater Design Manual and regulations that govern stormwater. I know the applicant has said that water quality will improve as a result of the proposed stormwater management for the facility. That improvement may occur as a result of the regulations that the General Assembly has directed the Maryland Department of Environment to update. In fact, the MDE has on its website a roadmap for that update. Those plans to update the regs include relate to including the most recent precipitation estimates, redefining the one-year rainfall event from 2.7 to 3.0 inches of rainfall, increasing the implementation of green infrastructure known as environmental site design to the maximum extent practical, updating stormwater regulations to require peak flow management for the 2-year and 10-year storms, investigating methods to implement additional stormwater management to address climate change, requiring local jurisdictions to develop watershed studies in certain areas and use these plans to implement watershed-specific flood management plans. This is what the Maryland Department of Environment intends to do related to bringing up to date our stormwater regs in the state. We urge you to consider that as you're recommending to the council where to move with this project. Thank you.
Thank you. Second row, third row. Yes, sir.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Sam McElroy. I live on 27419 Oxford Road. And in contrast to the gentleman who's been here all his life, I've just arrived. So maybe that allows me to offer a slightly different perspective. I bought a house here a year ago, attracted by the very lifestyle that has been so well articulated here, but not just the lifestyle, but the sense that in this world there are very few places where you see such manifest care in an environment. I live on the Oxford Road, and when you drive down the Oxford Road, it's somewhat of a privilege to pass every single house and see that every single homeowner cares deeply, loves deeply the environment in which they're living, and not only that, but actually goes to a considerable expense to abide by the rules. For example, if you're getting your lawn fertilized, are you using the right fertilizer? Are you checking the pH of your soil? Are you irrigating correctly? All of these decisions we're making on an individual basis in each individual home. And the result is, frankly, spectacular. It's a community of people who deeply care. And so all I would urge you in facing the needs of a town is to consider this idea of care, not just for the environment, but care for a principle, for a value system that makes this place so special, that makes this place a place that we decided to make our home here in the US for those very virtues. I would not abandon those virtues lightly. That is your golden goose. And I would never attempt to kill the golden goose. It's a huge mistake. So I'm not here to make strenuous objections because I've just arrived. I don't think that's my place to do that. But I do support the values of this community. It's why I've invested in this community. It's why I live here with my wife and my family. And I just reiterate that there are very few places, I've traveled this world extensively, there are very few places. I was raised, by the way, in farmland in the north of England and in Ireland. And I understand husbandry very, very well. It's part of my DNA. And there are very few places where you can drive morning and evening and be so conscious of the care and the love and the expense and the dedication of the citizenry to uphold the values of husbandry. And I would urge you to approach this with those values in mind. Whatever conclusion that leads to, please never abandon those values.
Thank you very much. Please sign in for the record.
Sure.
Yep. So we'll now move again to this side. Yes, ma'am. Please come forward. No, you're good.
Hello, I'm Marjorie Hardy Sheldon, and I'm a longtime resident and was born and raised on the Eastern Shore as well. I was first raised in Queen Anne County, and then my mom moved to Easton when I was in 1971, and she lived on the Oxford Road for 55 years. And recently, my husband and I bought a house a year ago and plan to retire down here. And I love the Eastern Shore. Like was mentioned, I have a passion for the wildlife, the open space. I did grow up on a farm in Queen Anne County, and I just heard about this whole development literally in an email a week ago, and I was just, my jaw dropped. My husband and I moved back because we felt we were getting away from Washington, D.C. traffic, Washington, D.C. development, and the crowds, and it just would break my heart to see the Easton that I grew up in, the Oxford I grew up in, I left that behind. And so a lot of wonderful things have been said tonight. I particularly love the passion of the gentleman who's a native, that we have a certain responsibility here as adults. I come from a family of environmentalists. My father-in-law was Russell Train. He set up many big environmental policies and preserved as much land as he could. And I'd like to continue that tradition. And we have a grand opportunity to change something, to make a statement for our future generations, our children and our grandchildren. So I just ask you to please deny this permission, this movement, and take into account those of us that love the Eastern Shore. Thank you.
Thank you. If you don't mind signing in before you leave the tape, okay? Anyone further in the front row, second row, third row, fourth row, final row? Yes, sir.
Thank you for acknowledging me again. I'm sorry. I'm Bob Camoso. I spoke earlier. I spoke about the quality of life here. I'd like to speak in the perspective of the Chesapeake Cycling Club, of whom I'm a member. We have about 100 participants in cycling throughout this terrific area. And again, my concern is, and I think our cyclists' concern, we go down that road, Oxford Road, very frequently, many times with about 20 cyclists. We are always concerned about safety. And again, the perspective is not just traffic in terms of cars, it's traffic in terms of the cyclists that already are a bit challenged at that intersection to make sure we cross that road safely. And we are accommodated very well with a nice shoulder along that road. We love going down to Oxford from Easton. I would be a bit concerned that this development would provide additional challenges for us to safely negotiate that intersection.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir. Okay, with that, we're going to close the public portion of the hearing. Mr. Showalter, would you, your client, Lane Engineering, would you guys want to come back to the table? So what we'll do at this time is we'll offer the applicant time to respond if he so desires, and then we'll go to commission comments, questions. Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Counsel. So we've taken a lot of notes. We took a lot of notes of the town meeting as well. The themes that we've certainly heard are themes about water quality, concerns about quality of life, concerns about growth of the town of Easton. More so at the town level than here, I think largely because of your introductory comments about the park. And we're in a position where we want to see something happen on this property. The town of Easton has a need for housing. This property is designated as a priority development area for the town of Easton. But we recognize that we're working in two jurisdictions and need to find a path that is acceptable to both jurisdictions in order to make something happen. So I don't have a specific proposal or presentation today,
Yep.
but we really value the Planning Commission's comments and insight as we think about everything that we've heard and decide how we move forward.
Okay, great, thank you. We'll start with Commissioner Stranahan. Questions, comments?
Okay, I have some comments and thoughts I'm going to make. I try not to make these in advance. I like to listen to everyone here and come up with them, so I will try not to ramble. I want to thank everyone who has shown up and who has spoken today, and those of you who have shown up and not spoken, but just taken this in and shown the interest in it. I'd also like to the developer let you know that Mr. Showalter and Mr. Waters particularly throughout, I've been to all the meetings and hearings so far, have represented you very well and have been open to taking people's concerns into place. From the county perspective, or at least from our commission perspective, the question before us is supplemental growth allocation. And just because we can do something or allow that doesn't necessarily in any instance mean that we should. We need to look at all of the things, including how it affects the citizenry of the county and how it affects the county overall from many perspectives, which a lot of which have been touched on today. We have water quality, we have traffic, there are also issues with schools, this, that, or the other. We are not here, as was brought up earlier, to take away any property rights. Because when you purchase the property, it was, as was Mr. Allsbach, I believe, mentioned, that there is room outside of the critical area, and that is not the concern of this commission. Our concern is what is within the critical commission. And Mr. Pluta has spoken before. He is not here today, so I will not quote him, but some of the things that he mentioned, one of the big things that struck me was in the buffers. And you all have come up with good plans in the 100-foot, 200-foot, 300-foot buffer. But as he mentioned in one of, I believe it was the town planning commission meeting, you need to take another 700 steps to get to the 1,000-foot critical area, because it is critical. And we're dealing with an impaired water system there, along with all the other issues that come up with this. And this is something that can't be undone once we have give the growth allocation up, supplemental allocation up, because the town of Easton, as was stated earlier, has used all of their allocation. You all have done your studies about traffic, about water impairment, all of those, and I appreciate that. One of the things I've noticed in reading all the reports that I could read is, and it was brought up earlier, that there can be lots of studies that come with different outcomes. But one of the things which was in, I believe, the town's planning commission's supplemental report about, and it has to do directly with studies, is that one of the conclusions was that there's no historic waterfowl staging and concentration areas on or adjacent to the subject property. And this may be a very minor thing, but it's to my point to where studies come to their conclusions. Anyone who has driven up and down Oxford Road this time of year could come to that same conclusion. Anyone who has driven up and down and looked to either side of the road in November through February comes with a very different conclusion, because there are hundreds and thousands of waterfowl to be seen there at all times. And up until fairly recently, for years, there was a very large sign that proclaimed that piece of property a waterfowl sanctuary. I was probably naive, and many others may have been. My belief at the time was, it's a waterfowl sanctuary. That's wonderful. It's going to be such forever. I think we need to tread very carefully before we give up something as precious as supplemental growth allocation. Because there is no coming back for that. And Mr. Showalter, Mr. Waters, moving forward, next time, I would like to see not just why we can, but why we, from the county's perspective, should consider granting supplemental allocation. What interest does the county have, and what betterment is it for the county as a whole and the citizens who have taken their time and effort to show up, speak, and write letters and things to us. Those are just some off-the-cuff thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Corson?
I want to thank Commissioner Stranahan. I thought his points were very valid, and thank the public for being here today and providing very thoughtful feedback, and Ryan for you being here as well. This is a very special piece of ground. I think we need to be very careful with that. And we are here to discuss the supplemental growth allocation, and there are certain aspects of this that are very important, water quality being one of them. I noticed that as part of the Town of Easton meeting, there's some additional evaluation and enhancements to that stormwater that I'd certainly like to see. But not to echo a lot of your comments. I think that the comment about not why we shouldn't, but why we should is very valid. And I think that's something we need to understand. As part of this process.
Well, I guess I would start by saying I know the county has a process to grant growth allocation, but in my view, we really don't have a policy to do that. My opinion is this is something that is a lot broader than just this one project. I think it's something that needs to be discussed in the comprehensive plan update. Again, this is a finite number we're dealing with. I reserve the right to make further statements or opinions at our July meeting, but I think both the public and the applicant has a right to know what I'm thinking and where I'm leaning, and again, so, you know, I think Commissioner Stranahan put it right. You know, what's the bottom line? What's in it for the county? When I look at growth allocation in my mind, and again, I think this is a broader discussion, it should benefit the community in a whole. I think this is probably a considerable amount of acreage to go to one project that is private for profit. I look at the environmental concern. I look at the Tredeavon, and I think it's probably a great project at the wrong time in the wrong place. I keep thinking about what Commissioner Spees said at a previous hearing. The solution to pollution is dilution. If something goes wrong here, but there's no backup. I'm a farmer. The other year we put in over 2 miles of grass waterways on some newly acquired land. We lost those in one hurricane event. We had 10 inches of rain. I was sick. I was absolutely sick. We're in the process of putting them all back now. We're going to keep doing that. But on some of these, you know, a project such as this, you know, I guess I have to ask my question is, why would we take the chance? So when I look at our comprehensive plan, I look at the 7 standards that we refer back to. Again, I think on the policy side, I look at the timing of development. There's a lot going on in the county right now. I look at the traffic. Can the roads handle it? I look at the schools. I look at the health care. My mother-in-law was recently at the hospital, sat in the emergency for 6 hours in the emergency room. There's a problem. I know in the schools, I think if anybody wanted to be a substitute teacher, you can, and I don't mean this in a negative way, but I think there is, you know, we're facing all these shortages in the last couple of years. And you know, maybe we just need to catch our breath a little bit and catch up with things. It's just, it's a lot going on, and we've got to absorb it all. I look at the Planning Commission. We are the gatekeepers, as is the County Council. I understand the town's concerns. There's some more questions that I think we need to have answered, but in the back of my mind, these are the things that are keeping me up at night. So.
Thank you.
Yep. Staff, anything from staff?
No, nothing further to add from staff unless you have questions of us.
Yep. The town, we've got several, the town represented. Any questions, comments, responses? Yep.
I think we're just here to, again, be available to answer any questions if you have any.
Okay. All right. With that,
I would move that we table any vote on this and keep the record open until our July meeting.
okay. Okay.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second to continue this at our July meeting. We will keep the record open. It would be my intent at that July meeting, if there is new information or further information, please get that to us before that so we have time to adequately take a look at that. I think there's some outstanding issues with the town Planning Commission that they asked of the developer, some information. I maybe we'll have some of that by July, maybe not. We'll see where we are and we'll go from there. Okay?
Great. Thank you for your time.
Okay, yep.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, we will move back to our regular agenda under item 4, new business. B, the applicant 25879 Rural Oak LLC has requested a postponement of that. So we'll move to agenda item 5, discussion items. Brennan, any discussion items?
No, we have no items for discussion at this point in time.
Okay. staff matters. Andy, I'll ask that you again introduce Rebecca to the group.
Yes, for those who have not met Rebecca, this is Rebecca Gay, as in Marvin Gaye, because she spells, her last name is spelled G-U-A-Y, but it's Gay. And she'll be taking over, taking over my duties for the Planning Commission going forward. I mean, I'm still around, I'm still part of the firm and part of the Office of Law, but she is a resident of Easton, and it just, from an efficiency standpoint, it makes a lot of sense. Anyway, and she's very good at what she does.
Yep, great. Welcome aboard, Rebecca. Yep, great. Okay. Item 7, work sessions. Brennan, anything?
We have no work sessions scheduled as of late. I know that Ray Clark informed me that they are working on finalizing some edits and updates for the comprehensive water and sewer plan. So that is likely to be on a future agenda, but it hasn't been identified at what point in time that would be considered by you all.
Okay. Agenda item 8, commission matters. Anything for the good of the group? Okay, seeing nothing. See, we've still got anything you'd like to bring up?
Just listening.
Okay, great, good. Okay, well, with that, if there's nothing further, we will adjourn the meeting at 5 after 11. So have a great week, and we will